What's good, YouTube? It's Justice. I used to be Pay, and today I'm back with another video. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about why rappers should stop signing to other rappers. But before I get into that, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Do all those things. It helps me out a ton, and I apologize in advance if there's a crazy glare on my glasses. Rapper-owned labels have been a thing for a very long time, but it feels like they're kind of like collectively falling off right now. And for me personally, it's just been a concept that I've never understood, because rappers and labels, really artists, musicians in general, and labels have been having issues since the beginning of the music industry. They're always butting heads, going back and forth, creative differences, complaints with money. Like, there's always issues between artists and labels. But you add onto that another label and now a rapper, and it's just even more confusing. Like, why, if everyone's already having trouble signing to a label, now you're signing to a label through a label? Like, that concept in itself never really made a whole bunch of sense to me. But in this video, I'm just going to talk about why I don't think people should be doing it anymore, especially in 2024 now, since we have a big track record in front of us and everything's just kind of changing. But don't get too excited. Don't get too angry over this video. This is just my opinion. You know, I might be wrong. You might disagree. You might not hear everything I say and click with it, but this is just my opinion. And for me personally, I am going to stay a little bit away of like the actual contractual talks, because we don't know, right? Like, we rarely get to see any of these contracts. We don't get to see the paperwork. We hear about certain deals that may be correct. We hear about certain contract splits, but we don't really know, right? So I'm not going to sit up here and be like, well, if you give 15% to this company and then another 15 here and then 15 to the guy who signed you, I'm not going to sit here and do that for this video, because we don't really know. That's all speculation for the most part. Of course, there's rumors and stuff, but I'm going to stick to the stuff that I can really talk about. I'm not going to talk too much about the contract stuff, because that's easy to do. Also, I could just say, why would you sign to him through him? Because now you're going to be paying him a piece and him a piece, and then you got three people taking a bite out of your pie before it even hits your plate. But we're just going to get into the problems that I have with it. Firstly, I just feel like a lot of the guys who are kind of in those like contract bidding wars where every label is kind of sending them an offer don't really need to sign to another rapper. Like, the main reason people kind of sign to rappers is to get that co-sign from them and like be in their like bubble, that bigger artist bubble and environment, and have access to that artist and their insight and their knowledge about the industry, and also having access to that artist's fan base, because they have a much larger fan base and they're taking you all around the world in these different cities, different arenas and all that stuff. So there are benefits to signing to a rapper, and oftentimes people are signing to rappers who are, you know, people they looked up to when they were younger. You know, it might be somebody that inspired them to make music in the first place, or heavily influences the music that they make now. Look at somebody like Gunna in YSL, or Ken Carson, Destroy Lonely in Opium. Like, you can clearly see that there's a heavy influence from the top guy on the bottom guy, not just in what they did after the label, but what they did going into signing to the label. So that is a thing as well. And there's something to be said about the belief that, like, it's better to be a part of that artist's label than be on your own, or be a member of another label where, you know, you're just a member of UMG. Nobody really knows, because most casual fans don't know where artists are signed unless they're like complaining about it online or something. So most fans don't really know who you're signed to in terms of a record deal. But if you sign to an OTF, people know that. If you sign to a 1017, people know that. So there is a boost that's there to be had, but oftentimes that boost isn't as, you know, big as most people think it is, or long-term wise, it doesn't really have that much of an effect. Artists that are up and coming and like filing between a bunch of different offers from labels, if they're going to be successful, they're probably going to be successful regardless of the rapper that they're signed to. Now, that's not for me to say that like your label doesn't matter, because your label definitely matters, and the way that they treat you as an artist and handle you and your label splits and what they allow you to do creatively, like, your label matters a lot. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying, okay? Your label matters, and that can make or break somebody's career oftentimes. More times than not, break their career rather than like make you. But you need a good label. That's not what I'm saying. But if the label offers are the exact same, the only difference is there's a rapper on one side and there's a rapper not on the other side, that probably doesn't matter, okay? In the long term of things, that probably doesn't matter. If you're going to work as an artist, you getting that co-sign from that rapper and being signed to them, being affiliated with them, yes, it'll matter in the short term, but long term wise, it probably doesn't matter as much as people would like to think it does. Like, yes, it matters, but not that much. You can look at somebody like Gunna in YSL. Does Gunna being signed to YSL heavily help his career? Probably, yes. Like, being closely tied with Young Thug in the beginning years, that helped him a lot. And being tied to Young Thug even a couple years ago, that helps him a lot. Don't get me wrong. But was Gunna probably gonna be successful regardless of where he went, as long as like, you know, the label wasn't holding him back. Like if you put him in the exact same position, label, contract, all that stuff, just on a different label, and you take away Young Thug, was Gunna still going to be successful? Yes. Gunna was still going to be successful. I don't mean you take away Young Thug as in like he never meets him and never grows up in that area and he never, like, that's not what I mean. I mean, if you take away the fact that he's signed to Young Thug, does that really change that much? I don't think so. You can look at somebody like Lil Baby. Lil Baby only started rapping because of Young Thug. He was around Young Thug and Gunna in the early years, and they were helping him develop into an artist. But Lil Baby didn't need to be signed to Young Thug to be successful, and that's the point I'm trying to make here. If you're gonna work, you're probably gonna work without having to necessarily have that rapper above you. And if you weren't gonna work, then, you know, having that rapper above you probably does help, but at the end of the day, you're probably still not going to work. Signing with the right label 100% matters, because if you sign with the wrong label, that can ruin your career. But if the offers are pretty much the same, if everything's the same between two labels, there's just a rapper on one side and one on the other, I just don't think it really matters that much. That just seems like one less mouth to feed. Now, for the artists that maybe like grew up around a Lil Durk and isn't really getting any looks from anywhere else, yeah, you probably should sign to OTF. And there's no doubt that there are like benefits to signing to a big rapper. Mostly the one that everyone does is the whole feature thing, right? You sign an artist and immediately give them a feature. That's what most rappers do when they sign a new rapper. And that's a good way to put them in front of a big audience. Like look at Don Toliver in Astroworld. Don Toliver's feature on Astroworld literally took him from a complete zero to a hero overnight. Most people had never even heard the name Don Toliver. We didn't know who that was. We were just like, who is this guy? He kind of sounds like Juice WRLD, and people were looking him up, and then he became a big name pretty much off of that feature. But that method has been done to death. Like for every one Don Toliver, there's like 50 Smileys. And Smiley got a whole feature from Drake, and I don't think that's ever gonna amount to anything crazy. Not trying to be rude, but just being honest. Like just getting that feature isn't anything crazy anymore. Everyone does it, and you're not gonna turn it into Don Toliver. That's a lightning in a bottle type of thing. You know, you can look at somebody like Buka 600 on OTF. He's gotten plenty of features from Von and Durk, but you know, no disrespect, I don't ever see him taking off. He hasn't taken off yet, at least, not from those features. So yes, there is a benefit to signing to a big artist and getting that feature from them and all that type of stuff. But I wouldn't say that for most people, it's worth it. I don't think it's worth signing to an artist full time for a couple features here and like opening up for them on tour. Then there's the thing that most people talk about when they talk about rappers signing other rappers and why it's just not a good idea to sign to another rapper. And it's that they don't want you to be bigger than them. That's just kind of how it works for the most part. And, you know, record labels are scummy. They'll try to finesse you. They'll try to get all types of stuff out of you. They'll do crazy, horrible things. But for the most part, when they sign an artist, they want that artist to be profitable. They want that artist to get as big as possible on that first contract, especially because then they're going to have to re-up you in a couple years and give you more money. But they want you to be successful more times than not. Not saying record labels won't scam you. They won't run you through the mud. They'll do you dirty. But they more times than not at least want you to be successful. But with a rapper-owned label, they don't sign you with the expectations of you one day becoming this huge star that's bigger than them. When they gave the little homie a contract who was rapping outside, you know, the Las Vegas restaurant that they left, they didn't give him that contract with the hopes of him becoming bigger than them one day and them just falling back and becoming a record label manager. No, they just signed you because, you know, you was pretty good. They gave you a little chance. They put a glass ceiling over you immediately most of the time when you sign to these rapper-owned labels, and that glass ceiling is the artist themselves. So sometimes that ceiling might rise. Sometimes that ceiling might fall. So there's that. And most of the time it's because rappers, when they have these labels, it's a label under a major label, sometimes even under another major label. Like look at Moneybagg Yo and his label. He's got his own label while being signed to CMG, which is Yo Gotti's label, which is under another label. So it's a label under a label, like, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of times for these artists, it's really just a finder's fee. A lot of the times they're not really that deep into the management and doing all these things. So yeah, you're signing to so-and-so, but is so-and-so really in the handling of your career? And is he really in the management? I don't know. Even somebody as big and as creative as Kanye is, he talked about it when he had good music. He said, dude, I'm not a label owner. I'm not a record label manager. I don't really like doing this. I don't want to do this. And he said that it was just kind of too much for him. He didn't really want to do it. So if that's too much for Kanye, if Kanye's not really doing it, and Kanye isn't the best measurement for most things, but for this, I think it's a good baseline because he's Kanye. He's one of the most creative artists ever, and he has a vision, and it works most of the time. So if Kanye's not really that good at the management thing, and he's not really that into it, and maybe he's just not doing a good job, you think Lil Baby is? You think Lil Durk is? Think Moneybagg Yo is? Now, I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they're great label managers. Maybe they know exactly what they're doing and they're very hands-on. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but you can kind of see where I can make that connection where I go, wait a minute, if one of the most creative rappers of all time is struggling with a label and managing a label and really putting things together and honestly doesn't even really want to do it. If somebody with the vision of a Kanye is saying that, I don't know about these other rappers. In reality, artists are signing to other artists to be a part of their ecosystem, but that is a double-edged sword when you're always tied to a certain rapper, because when that rapper is riding high, you're getting the residuals of the high as well, and when they hit a rough patch, you're getting some of the residuals of that rough patch too. Unless you're signed to a Drake or a Jay-Z back in the day, or a Wayne in the 2000s, or even a Travis Scott today, there's no guarantee that that artist is always going to be like super hot, super relevant, or have a super massive platform for you, like a tour to perform in where you're in a major arena, 20, 30,000, however many. You might be even in a stadium. You might be at Rolling Loud. There's no guarantee that you have that platform if you're not signed to one of those major artists. If you're signed to a smaller artist, you're kind of going with the ebbs and flows with that artist. And I mean no disrespect by this, but imagine somebody who signed to Kodak Black when, Super Gremlin was going crazy. He was great. Super Gremlin was #1 song. Great time to be signed to Kodak. Great time to be opening up at his shows for him, whether that's Rolling Loud, Coachella, or his own shows. It's a great time to be under Kodak Black and Sniper Gang when Super Gremlin's going crazy. But right now, it's probably a little rough. Or being signed to like somebody like Meek Mill right now. He's going through a rough patch on his own, but because you're signed to him, you're going through that as well. And like I talked about with that glass ceiling, it lowers with the artist. It might also be hard to kind of establish your own identity as an artist. Now, it's already hard to do that as an up-and-coming artist in general, to get people interested in you and want to hear you. But now, the first time that people hear about you or there's any interest surrounding your name, it's because you're tied to another artist. And that itself is probably even harder to break out of, especially if you're signed to a super charismatic rapper that has really their own kind of vibration and swag, kind of like a Travis Scott. Like a lot of the guys in Cactus Jack are just known as like Travis Scott's lackeys, outside of obviously Don Toliver, who's the most successful guy. And of course, like Smiley and OVO, like he's just like Drake's kind of weird friend. I'm sending a lot of shots at Smiley this video, and I don't really mean to, but like he's just an easy target. I'm sorry. Or you can look at Opium. I feel like Ken Carson has really established himself outside of Cardi, but the others have, here and there. Destroy Lonely kind of has, but Homicide Gang, again, they're just probably looked at as like Cardi's henchmen. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to these artists. I'm just saying, when you get under an artist that has a lot of like personality and they have a really big level of just like feel, they have a different energy than most rappers, it's hard to get your own identity out from underneath that guy. And maybe that just means that the artists who can't do that aren't that good, or, maybe it doesn't. Who really knows? But we can look at a whole bunch of examples of that. Even as of recently, Jackboy and Kodak Black, they had a beef going back and forth, and Jackboy was signed to Kodak, and he felt like Kodak was trying to keep him in his shadow. Also, rapper-owned labels just don't seem to be doing too hot nowadays. They used to be kind of running things. They had, YMCMB back in the day, G-Unit, Rockefeller, and others. But as of recently, it's been kind of rough for these types of labels. OTF really has no one after the passing of Von. OVO really only has Party Next Door. 4PF or Glass Window Entertainment, as it's been rebranded. It has Rilo, who has a lot of potential. He has he's really good. Rilo's really, really good. So 4PF has somebody there. And they also split 42 Doug with CMG, so that's good. 1017. Man, 1017 is just in shambles right now. And then obviously YSL is fighting Arico right now. But before that, they weren't going super crazy outside of like Gunna and Lil Keed. So, I mean, even there, it wasn't anything super crazy. And they were like one of the primary, like, this is a rapper-owned label that's doing really well. NBA as a label isn't really doing too hot. They got No Cap. Even like Cactus Jack, besides, Don Toliver not nothing really too crazy happening over there. The only rapper-owned label that's kind of working at the moment, at least in my opinion, is CMG. CMG has Moneybagg Yo and Glorilla at the front, which is like better than any other two that you can really get in terms of like commercial success right now. I know somebody's gonna be like, oh, well, what about, NBA Lil Jojo? He's really good. That's not what I mean. I mean in terms of like tangible success, and that was just a made up name. And then they also have half of 42 Doug. 42 Doug is also partially signed to them, and ESTG and Mozzie. But the thing about CMG is, yes, Yo Gotti is a rapper, so it is a rapper-owned label, but Yo Gotti is an older rapper, and he's a rapper that really isn't too focused on like being the biggest rapper in the world anymore, and he doesn't really seem to be super focused on like furthering his own career that much necessarily. He's not like locked in on that. So maybe that's a coincidence, or maybe it's not. Maybe you need to sign to an older rapper if you're going to sign to any rapper in general, because that seems to be really the only rapper-owned label right now that's still kind of cooking. And then, of course, to cap things off, you have the argument about the bites of pie again, because with a label, you already got somebody taking a bite out of your pie, but now you add on another label and another artist on top of that, and now you got a couple of mouths taking a bite out of your pie. Or if you're Blueface, you got like 25 people taking a bite out of your pie when you're signed to Cash Money West and Whack 100 and then Cash Money. And so
got Cash Money through Cash Money?
Cash Money West.
Oh, so that is through Birdman and
all I know is Cash Money West and Whack 100. It could. You gotta ask Whack about the other people involved.
Yep.
That's really the main argument that people like to use, but I don't like to use it that much because I don't really know. We don't know what's on these contracts, right? We don't know if UMG gets 10%, then this person. We don't know if Interscope gets 10%, and then CMG gets 15, and then Moneybagg Yo's label gets 10 if you sign it. Like, we don't know, right? We don't really know the breakdown of what's going on here, so I'm not going to speak on that too much, but that's a very obvious thing that most artists don't want to deal with, is just having a lot of mouths to feed before you can finally eat. Because most of the time, if you're signing with a rapper-owned label, you might not be that big yet. You might be big, but a lot of the times, you're not getting like Ice Spice signing to a rapper-owned label. I don't know why she came to mind, but she was the first like big time mainstream star to blow up in the last couple of years that came to mind. Ice Spice is somebody who's massive, and she probably could have signed to like Nicki Minaj or something, but no, she went and signed to a record label that doesn't have a rapper at the front of it. But that's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. If you agree, if you disagree, let me know down below in the comments. If you made it this far, I greatly appreciate you. Have a good day. Be safe. Be blessed. I go by the name of Pay. Peace.